Hi everyone, my name's Helen Shannon and I lead a church called Church of Five, which is on Strawberry Vale in North London. Great to have the chance to speak with you today about church planting, but church planting in the missional context of estate. So 12 years ago, my husband and I and our family moved into Strawberry Vale. It's a top 10 deprivation estate, as I say, in North London. And it's actually quite an isolated estate because it's penned in on one side by the North Circular and the other side by the A1000. And to be honest, you really wouldn't come down to Strawberry Vale unless you lived here or unless you wanted to pick up your supply of drugs. It has got an awful reputation in the locality and it doesn't actually deserve it because it is a wonderful place where people look after one another, they look out for one another, and there's a real sense of community. And my family and I, we just wouldn't live anywhere else. I don't think it's just about where God called us to, but it is a beautiful place, but with people who often have huge struggles. Now, we had done estates ministry before. A few years before, we had had the use of a small community centre on an estate, and we'd done kids work there and families work there. And, you know, we'd seen some fruit from it. We'd seen some people come to know Jesus. But, you know, we really weren't sharing in people's sufferings. I remember one day we came in the morning to do the parenting group, and all people could talk about was Mad Machete Man that had run around the estate the night before, half naked. And the Lord really actually spoke to me at that point and said that we need team, we as a family, but we also need team to move into an estate. Now, unfortunately, we couldn't move in on that estate, but a few years later, actually, the Lord opened up for us the chance to move in on the estate where we live now. And we knew we wanted to see a worshipping community here of some sort, but we didn't know what it would be. We didn't know whether it would be kind of just small groups and then we'd bus everybody up to our big sending church. We really didn't know what it would look like at that time. But what we did know is we wanted to kind of do bottom-up church planting rather than top-down church planting. We wanted the church plant to grow up naturally and be indigenous, if you want. And we wanted it to be hugely built on relationships. And so we spent the first 2.5 years before we started any kind of regular formal worship, really getting to know people, opening up our home in probably quite a radical way. Our kids weren't much younger then. They'd bring all their mates from the estate in, and then their parents would come in. We'd have the front door open and the back door, and there'd just be a constant stream of people through. And over the years, we really got to know people. They became our friends and our neighbours, and we'd kind of throw parties for any reason, you know, birthdays, Christmas, the hamster's birthday, we'd throw a party. Hospitality is still and was very much then an important part of our mission here, to build those relationships. And part of that was also actually spending time listening to people, because actually they had the keys to what God wanted to do on this estate, and we needed to listen to them. We needed to hear about the history. We needed to know what we needed to pray out and pray in, and we knew that they had the keys for that. So we had a lot of cups of tea, and we did a lot of listening. We also did a huge amount of praying as well. And I soon realised, you know, I thought I was okay at prayer, but I soon realised that I had to up my prayer life just to survive living in quite a needy and a difficult community just to keep my head above water, let alone taking ground. And so we started doing regular prayer meetings. So we'd have prayer breakfast. We'd have people over for breakfast, and then we'd pray. We'd do prayer walks. I realised about myself, you know, I am a mass extrovert, but I found it really difficult to pray on my own. And you know, at the beginning, I beat myself up about that, rather than instead working with what God had given me, which was that need to be around people and pray. And so we still do a lot of praying together as a team, even now. But that was crucial at the beginning: prayer, and more prayer. And we really also wanted to serve the community that God had called us to. As I said, we didn't want to do top-down church planting. We wanted to do bottom-up church planting. And we also knew that, you know, God had given people here dreams and visions of how he wanted their community to be. I mean, after all, God had been here long before we'd arrived, walking in and out of people's homes and in and out of their lives. He put his dreams and his visions in there, and part of our job was to serve them, to see what the dreams and the visions they had, to help them come to fruition. And one of the things that they really wanted in their community was that they wanted more kids and youth work. Now, interestingly, that's what I used to do. I used to be a kids and community worker. So that was amazing. And a lot of the initial team that we brought along also had been involved with kids work as well. So we were able to help them achieve what they wanted to do. And it was the same with the community centre. The great team that ran the community centre really wanted it be kept resident led, but they really needed somebody with a laptop who could do the minutes, and somebody who could be the treasurer because they knew how to work an Excel spreadsheet. And so my husband Mark and I were able to join the committee and serve the community there, so that even to this day the committee is still resident led, and we're still there helping on it. We're really quite happy to step out at any point, but the Lord just hasn't brought anybody, you know, with those gifts and skills there yet. But actually, we've always come in with an attitude of serving the people here. And I do get a little bit worried sometimes when people start to come into a community like ours with all sorts of programs and using them to form the basis of a church plant. It does concern me, because I just think it sets up a power imbalance right at the beginning. And I think that's something we have to be really careful for in estates church planting. Anyhow, there's this odd thing that people hate authority, and yet they will defer to authority all the time. And we've had to work really hard to break that down. The other thing I think that's been really important is the team. So the team that we brought with us are very different than the team that we now have 12 years later. And I think that's because the first team had to have specific gifts and skills, and they're very different gifts and skills that are needed now. But I feel that as a leader, I needed to know who I was and the gifts and skills that I had, so that I could draw a team around me who had very different skill set. So I'm an apostolic pioneer. I'm not a pastor. I have a pastor's heart, but I don't have a pastor's temperament. And so I need lots of people, lots of pastors on my team. But one thing I would say with team is, do be careful who you bring, because if you're doing an estates church plant, it is a mission field. And if people are struggling with quite a lot in their lives, what will end up happening is you'll end up trying to help them rather than being focused on the mission. And they may be better in another situation and just coming to help down on an infrequent basis rather than being part of your main core team, because you just get mission driven. Then right from the beginning, when we realized that we wanted to actually form church rather than just worshipping communities down here. We wanted a church that people could come as they are to, and that has been our tagline, our slogan all along, come as you are. And people have really done that. Most people who come to church, if I've had very little experience of church, they don't know what to do. But we wanted a church that was hugely informal. We also were challenged right at the beginning that we needed to meet on a weekly basis, that if it was bi-weekly or monthly, people would miss it and then they just wouldn't form community. And so we just set out, first of all, to do, after our first 2.5 years of setting that groundwork, of doing a church service every week. And actually things that we had to work out quite quickly what was important to us, because we were a small church that had come from a very big church, and we couldn't do everything that the big church could do. So what were we going to do, and what facilities did the big church have that we could use? And so right at the beginning, our non-negotiables were worship, sung worship. And that's partly because for us that was a place of encounter with God. And it is only as we encounter God that we are transformed. The Bible was really important to us. We had bought lots of Bibles and in lots of languages, and we had them on the table, and we waited for people to find the place in the Bible. We got people reading it out, even though that was quite painful at times, and still is, because kind of sometimes Bible language is quite difficult. We wanted hospitality to run through what we were doing, so we have always eaten together at the end. We've always had prayer ministry, a chance for people to encounter people in prayer. We've always had youth and kids work. We've always had intercessions, which are led by a local leader as well. So there was kind of whole, and the other thing is we have always taken an offering, and we always teach generosity, but we teach generosity about giving God your time and your talents and your treasures. And as I say, we do take an offering, because why should we deny people who are on really low incomes the joy of giving? It's a blessing, isn't it, when we get to give? And why should, just because they're on low income, why should we not expect that, from them too? Obviously, it's going to look a lot different, kind of financially at the end of the day, but actually that is a joy for them too. As I said, we knew we couldn't do everything, and so some of the more bespoke ministries, actually, we would just link back into St Bees for as well. We kind of worked things out as we went along. We didn't have all the answers. We had a vision, and we had definite values, but actually our vehicles have always been movable, because some things work for a little while and then they don't work after that, because people have changed, or people have fallen out of relationships, or a certain situation has changed. So we hold lightly the vehicles, but hold fast to the vision and the values. And we also we work with the 4 Bs: bless, belong, believe, become. So we want to bless the whole of our community. The whole of our estate should be better because there's a group of Christians on there. We want to allow people to belong to our worshipping community. So we have our church has very fuzzy edges. You don't have to sign on the dotted line. You can come and be part of our family, experience what it's like to be with people who love Jesus, and become part of that. And we know that as people become part of that, then they start to believe in Jesus. And as they start to believe in Jesus, then they start to become all that God has called them to be. So it's not like they have to change before they're allowed to join our church community. They're allowed to be part of our church family and then come to know Jesus, and then start then to become the people that God always created them to be. And part of that is, and which is we hold a really high value, is local leadership. God has put gifts and skills, has given gifts and skills to our Christians down here on the estate, and we want to see them leading in their context. And our job as kind of a scaffold team is to spot those giftings and to almost prophesy them out of them, so that they can start doing those things that they are called to do, and then encourage them and help them along the way and help them shine up those gifts and skills that God has given them. And that takes a very special kind of team member, not to want to get up the front and do it themselves, but actually want to find somebody, a local leader in our family, who can do that role and help them to do that. So local leadership is key. Well, I hope that's been helpful. I know that we're going to have a bit of a Q&A session soon, and so do write down any questions that you have. You can also contact me on social media. I'm Urban Dibley. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram if you'd like to connect before that. Look forward to chatting more soon. Bye.